I want to start today with a personal note. And I want to thank all of my friends who emailed last night. Yesterday was a very tough day for anybody who was a member of my faith. I got a nice note from the president last night, yesterday afternoon, telling me how he mourns, not only for those that died yesterday in the fire and the shooting, but also for those who are mourning with the death of the head of the church that also happened the same morning. It was a tough day for Latter-day Saints, and I thank the president and all those who emailed me. Let me just tell you a little bit about Russel M. Nelson. First of all, he was the president of our church, and he was a guy that you know from history, or you should know from history. He was a prominent cardiac surgeon and researcher. Back in the 50s, he was part of the research team that went on to develop the heart-lung machine, and then he went on to develop his own heart-lung machine, did one of the first open-heart surgeries in the country. He pioneered the machines and the devices for the heart-lung bypass, and many of the procedures still used today in open-heart surgery. He was an amazing, amazing man. In the last 10 years of his life, all he spoke about was love for one another, reading our scriptures, growing closer to the Spirit, as he said many times, because Christ is coming, and we must be ready to welcome him. So it was a tough weekend, and there were bright spots as well. But I want to spend some time because I did get a lot of email from friends who are part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and most of them were in tears because they were online and they read the words of so-called Christians. And they were saying things up to and including, because I know I saw them myself, I'm glad they're dead. I'm glad the leader died. I'm glad those people died because they're going to hell anyway, because they're a dangerous cult. And when I read that, I wept with the same kind of pain that I had on the death of Charlie Kirk when the non-Christians celebrated his death. I'm glad he's dead. And I wondered, what is the difference between these Christians and the non-Christians with Charlie? I would like to invite you for just a second to forget about doctrine, and let's just talk about what Christ told us to do, how to measure the truth. See, we don't know how to measure truth anymore. And the most basic way to measure truth is the way Christ told us how to do it. By their fruits ye shall know them. Not by the creeds written by men, not by denominational squabbles, not by gossip that we whisper about on who's in, who's out, but the measure of its fruit. Does the tree produce life? Does it bless? Does it heal? Or does it destroy? I would like to invite you to judge my faith, and you don't have to, and look, nobody's coming my way, okay? It's really, you don't want to be a Mormon. It's really hard. It's really hard. And then you get to be a pariah on top of it, so nobody's coming my way, so I'm not trying to convince anybody. All I'm saying is, judge us by our fruits, because the numbers don't lie. Latter-day Saints give an average of more than 400 hours of volunteer service every year. The average member. LDS charities have distributed $2.5 billion in humanitarian aid in the last decade alone in over 200 countries. When disasters hits, when hurricanes, earthquakes, wars, it's the LDS trucks and planes filled with food and clothing and medicine that are among the first to arrive. When it comes to their families, LDS families have one of the lowest divorce rates in the nation. Nearly 90% of LDS youth report abstaining from alcohol, drugs, and premarital sex, building lives rooted in discipline and stability. And patriotism? A recent survey showed that more than 90% of active Latter-day Saints express deep pride in America. That is far higher than the national average. So now let me ask you, just those fruits alone, are those enemies to Christ? Or are these people, these are signs of people who are trying? You may not agree, but they're trying imperfectly, like all of us, to follow him, to serve their fellow man, and to preserve the very principles that built the West. I saw a comment from somebody this weekend. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that Glenn Beck was a Mormon. Oh my gosh, no, really? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do with that now? In the last decade, my charity, the one that, yes, founded by a Mormon, has raised and distributed over $250 million, $250 million in aid. And that's not just dollars, but food and clothing and medicine and volunteers and trucks and planes. We're talking about clean water for villages, wheelchairs for the disabled, medical kits for refugees, rescuing people who are trapped in hurricanes, wildfire relief, rebuilding homes, you name it. We do it. By their fruits ye shall know them. And here's the key, not once, not a single time did we stop to ask any of those families for their voting record or their church ID card. We didn't ask if they were Methodist, Catholic, Baptist, Latter-day Saints, if they voted for Trump or Obama. We didn't ask about their doctrine. We saw the hungry, the grieving, the refugee running for their life, and we acted. Because that is what Christ commands his disciples to do. I have personally been involved raising funds to rescue Christians from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, all of them persecuted simply because they bear his name. Whole families that have been saved from slavery, women pulled out of trafficking, pastors spared from execution. And in all of this, never once did we ask, are you doctrinally correct according to my church's standards? No, we asked, how can we help you? And we don't stand alone. Franklin Graham, say what you will, he does not mince words about faith or doctrine, especially when it comes to my church. Yet his Samaritan's Purse has been one of our closest partners. Together, we've stood in war zones and natural disasters and disease outbreaks. Latter-day Saints side by side with evangelicals, I can't hear of it. Baptists and Catholics and Jews working together, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. When it comes down to it, biblically, the commandment is clear. Love thy neighbor. I'll go a step further. Love thy enemy. This is what it means. None of our churches are preaching anything useful. Love thy enemy. Love thy neighbor. How? This is how. This is how. Mourn with those who are mourning. Comfort them. My company, every day, my producers and my charities, every day, people from all different faiths, we all get together on a Skype call or together physically. We study our scriptures and we say a prayer. Every day before the show, my whole staff says a prayer for you. And it doesn't matter what their denomination is, what your denomination, what my denomination. God is God. This is what unity looks like. Not uniformity, unity. I will work with any church, any synagogue, any denomination that actually puts love into action. That is what builds the kingdom of God on earth. Hands dirty, backs bent, and hearts open. Yeah, but you're really not a Christian. I don't really care what you think. I really don't. I don't. I care what you say about people who are far better than me in my faith. You know, the forces of chaos, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they don't care. They unite with anybody, no matter how much they contradict each other. If it weakens the West, if it destroys our life, if it destroys everything that is biblical, oh, they're in on it. Islamists who will stone homosexuals will stand arm in arm with LGBTQ activists. Arm in arm, they do it every day. Communists march with anarchists. How is that possible? Because their God is power and chaos, and they will lock arms with anyone to seize it. But us? No, we can't link arms because I don't know if you're doctrinally correct. You can't link arms with people who feed the poor and clothe the naked and rescue the captive and defend the family because you differ on doctrine? If that is the hill you choose to die on, I will not remain on that hill with you. Because that hill, the battle is already lost then, if that's your hill you want to die on. The world doesn't need any more purity tests right now. The world needs Christians that actually live their faith, and that faith bears fruit. Does your faith bear fruit? I think it does, or you wouldn't be a part of it. When I see Christians rescued from slaughter, when I see partnerships that put aside pride in favor of love, I find fruit. Not for me. I expect to get what I read online. It unfortunately comes with my job. But when people are mourning, I would just ask that you not judge people by their label. You would mourn with those who are mourning. Be that Charlie Kirk, or any of the many that are still to be slaughtered. Stand with anyone who stands with Christ-like love, anyone who defends truth and liberty and family and the dignity of man. I invite you to join me. Not in joining of our doctrines and none of that. And if you will have me, I will gladly join you. The day will come when we can argue doctrine. It'll come, but today, the world is on fire. Evil is growing out of control. Our children's future is at stake. Our very souls and the souls of all that live today are at stake. Evil grows. If not you, who? If not now, when? Back in a minute. You don't notice when your body stops hurting, not right away. You don't sprint out of bed like a movie hero, leap into a backflip off the porch. You just stand, and you stand without thinking about it, and then you turn your neck without bracing for it, and you're like, wait a minute, what's happening to me? You open a jar without wincing. Halfway through dinner, you realize, I've been sitting comfortably the whole time. That's when it hits you. The pain that used to be part of everything, part of your morning, your drive, your work, your whole existence is just gone all of a sudden. That's what Relief Factor can do and has done for hundreds of thousands of people. Not overnight, not magically, but naturally, working with your body to strengthen your body, to help reduce the inflammation and fight the root causes of pain. And it's a daily supplement developed by doctors, and 2/3 of the people who try it go on to order more month after month. Relief Factor, it's not a miracle. It's a milestone. The moment you realize life feels normal again. Try their 3-week quick start. Give it a try for only $19.95. Visit relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF, 800, the number 4RELIEF. It's relieffactor.com. 10 seconds and back to the show. Let me see. Can we pull up the picture of the church on fire yesterday? I'm I mean, look at that.
Jeez.
Look at that.
Wow.
And, I don't know what's true yet. They haven't really come out with everything. I heard somebody who said that they were in the building and the shooter came in, drove through the front door. Everybody was up on the stand. I think it was their child, it's like a preschool thing where all of the kids are up on the, up in the front and they're doing, songs and everything else. I think yesterday was that for this particular church. And the truck hit the front door, shook even the pulpit. People started screaming, et cetera, et cetera. I think the bishop went out and took a shot in protection for others, but the guy got out and apparently he was saying, who do you worship, Jesus or Joseph Smith? Or who do you love, Jesus or Joseph Smith? And I'm like, well, those don't really fit in the same category, as one of them is the savior and creator of the universe. But if you didn't answer fast enough, I guess he shot you. I personally do not think this, I could be wrong. I personally do not think this was some crazy man who was a right-wing Christian that hated Mormons. I don't think that. I think this was a crazy man.
Glenn, just to interrupt you a little bit on that one. So Fox and Friends, Caroline Levitt was on and did say, from what I understand, based on my conversations with the FBI director, all they know right now is this was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith.
Oh, jeez.
And that doesn't mean, I think you said, right-wing Christian. We have no evidence of that. But at least this is the initial indication, is it was a targeted attack on Mormons at this particular church.
Well, I thank God for you. I thank God for this audience, because I know who you are. And I thank God for the loving gospel of peace that will keep Mormons from retaliating against something like that. Praise be to the Lord.
Glenn Beck.
All right. More in just a second, and I want to take you up to North Carolina and what happened there, because that is another disturbing story. We'll get to that here in a second. Let me tell you about Z Factor. It's easy to forget about what real sleep feels like. You're down at night, you call it rest, but, what if it's not? You're tossing and turning, you can't really, you're waking up all night long, you're checking the clock, the phone in the dark, you try to convince yourself that 6 broken hours is good enough, and the next day your patience is gone, and, you just can't get anything done. The truth is, sleep is essential to be able to repair the body. And if you can't just knock it out with heavy drugs. You can't. Z Factor is a natural sleep aid from the makers of Relief Factor, and it's help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and actually feel rested when you wake up. No knockout drops, no groggy aftermath. No, I did what last night? None of that. Time to stop just getting through the night and start experiencing what real rest feels like again. Z Factor, rest like you mean it. First-time Z Factor buyers enjoy 46% savings. It's $19.95 for a 30-day supply. ReliefFactor.com, 800-4-RELIEF.
If you want all the stories we talk about every day, you can get them with the free email newsletter. Sign up now at glennbeck.com.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck Program. My prayer is that those of us who profess discipleship will lead, and lead in our own faith and our own church, especially when your church is not leading. If your church If your church wasn't talking about these things yesterday, maybe you should find a new church. I don't know. There's been a lot of things going on, and we need pastors that are actually talking about things they're not talking about politics. They're talking about, how do I love my neighbor? If my neighbor hates me, how do I do that? And not some 2,000-year-old example, but something that you can take that 2,000-year-old example and go, see, it's like this today. Because it's hard enough to understand that we need people who are applying it today. Because I want you to understand, there is hatred on the rise, there is violence on the rise, there's all of this stuff on the rise. But what is it really? What is really on the rise? Evil. It's evil. That's what's on the rise. Evil. Chaos. Disorder. That all comes from one author, and it's evil. Madman, and I mean madman in this particular case, he targeted a crowded dockside restaurant in North Carolina. He was arrested on Saturday. He fired his rifle into a crowd of diners. 3 people were killed, 8 were injured. This was on Saturday. And this is happening in small communities, and you're like, what is happening to us? Now, records show that this guy, he has been filing these really bizarre lawsuits in North Carolina. One, he was accusing a Southport church of trying to kill him. The suit, which was filed in May, claimed the Generations Church was behind a civil conspiracy masterminded by the LGBTQ community, and white supremacist pedophiles were trying to kill him because he was a straight man. That's not the only lawsuit he has filed. This guy is unstable, very unstable. He was also a Marine. Purple Heart, Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, Iraq Campaign Medal, 2 Bronze Stars, a Humanitarian Service Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, National Defense Service Medal. 2 Bronze Stars. How did he get here? I think we have a lot of really unstable people, and we have been dismissing mental health. And this is one of the things I talked about years ago with AI that frightened me, with all of the information on everybody. It wouldn't be hard, and I'm not saying this is happening, but it will eventually. You could, an evil overseer could easily say, I want everybody in this zip code, tell me everybody who's on meds, who is seeing a doctor for schizophrenia, whatever, unstable, has had brushes with the police. I want everybody in that zip code. Give me the names. Now that I have the names, because it would take about that fast. Now that I have the names, find the one that I can destabilize to get them, to convince them to go shoot this person or shoot whatever up. All of that information and all of those devices now exist and can be done in an ephemeral way, so there's no evidence of it. Now, that I do not believe that is happening. That's me as a fiction author putting that out. But here is what is happening. Evil can do exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Doesn't need the internet. Doesn't need a device to do it. We live, and I said this to you a couple of months ago, we are now living in Gotham. And you need to understand that the times and the seasons have changed. We're now living in Gotham. And this is all part of the leftist plan. Destabilize. release people from prison, cause chaos in the streets. This is by design. But now we have unstable people on the streets in an atmosphere of chaos, in a society that has dismissed actions, glorified the actions of those who are shooting people, and made it seem almost normal and reasonable that you can do it. And then on top of it, we have dismissed those who really need psychiatric help. When I said we're living in Gotham, I want to play a scene, and I want you to think of, this comes from Batman Begins. And it's the scene, Dark Knight. And it's the scene where the Joker has been taken in to jail, and he's in a holding cell. And then there's like the drunk tank where all the other guys that are just riffraff that have been picked up, and they're right in a jail in the center of the police building. Okay. And if you remember right, Joker needed to break out of jail. So how was he going to do it? And you didn't know until somebody who was in the holding cell, clearly unstable, called to one of the police officers. And this happened. Listen.
Please, my insides hurt.
I don't really care. Back away.
The boss said he'd make the voices go away. He said he'd go inside and replace them with bright lights. Like Christmas.
You're out of your mind, pal. Back off. Get right away in the holding tank. Come on.
Is that a phone?
So what is that scene? That scene is a very disturbed man who is hearing voices, clearly, medically, in trouble. Hearing voices. He doesn't get any help. And so he says, the boss said he'd make the voices go away. I want you to think of Joker, because in that scenario, that's the boss, the Joker. I want you to think of the Joker as Satan. Some people just like to watch the world burn. That is probably the one of the better depictions of Satan in contemporary media. Joker. He took unstable people and whipped them up. When the guy says, the boss said he would make the voices stop and replace them with bright lights like Christmas. Satan is whispering to people, this is good. I'll make all of that pain stop. It's good that you do this. It's going to lead to your happiness, etc., etc. And then they die in the end because Satan doesn't care. Another soul destroyed. We're entering a phase now where we have actual hatred on the streets. As Stu said, and I just found out, as Stu told me, and I pray this is just an unstable person that had a problem with Mormons. But we don't know yet. But apparently the killer had a problem with Mormons. I'm praying that they're unstable because I can at least get my arms around that. But we have people who know exactly what they're doing. Those who are being used and still know what they're doing. And then we have those who are mentally ill, who are going to be used by the literal Joker and promise that he will replace those voices with bright lights. Both shooters, at least as it stands now, both shooters from this weekend were both U.S. Marines. Ask yourself this. If that becomes a trend, and by the way, you can thank God that Trump is in office today, but that doesn't last forever. And these things happen. How long before the left, who only wants guns to be removed, doesn't really care, just wants guns removed, how long before they're saying our military is unstable and we have to remove guns from our military? And then what does that do? Friday, I told you what was happening in South Korea is happening here. It is a blueprint. And it is going to be our responsibility as people who love the Republic, who love America, who love freedom, to make sure that we remain in control of ourselves, that we do not add to the chaos. Instead, we find ways to be peacemakers. We stand firmly in what we believe. We stand up against evil and we stand up against lies. But we stand up firmly rooted in those principles of Judeo-Christian principles that made this country what it is today. Because there are going to be voices on both sides that want to seize power. Because if things continue to get out of control, people will start to scream with it. They'll scream. Do whatever you have to do to make it stop. And that's when you lose a republic. We must rely on one another. And we must rely on the decency of others and the foresight of those we elect, especially locally, to help people who are in deep, deep need psychologically, because they are out on the streets in droves. Just another layer to the chaos that the Joker is planting. Let me tell you about Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth, I mean, you know, the world is a dangerous place. And every day it feels like the world is taking a swing at you and your family. It's loud, it's cold, it's relentless. You know, every day there's a news story. Didn't need to hear that. But it's always something. And your home has to be something more. Your home has to be a haven, a sanctuary, a place that warms your bones and your children's spirits, a place where they can drop their guard, be held, even just by a blanket, a nest where the little birds can fly back to when the rain comes pouring down. Cozy Earth wants to help you build that nest. Okay, you have to build it, you know, through spiritual means, but you can also make it easy to have it just a cozy place where, I mean, wouldn't you love to have a blanket that you wrap around your kids that feels like they always can feel you hugging them, even though you're not hugging them? Or a towel that wraps up and makes them into a burrito when they get out of the bathroom. You know, they get out of the bath, they're all wet, and you wrap them up in that towel, and it's just so soft and cozy. That's the kind of memories you want the home to have them recall when they grow up. The kind of fabric that feels like a promise. You're home now. You're safe. Let it go. Cozy Earth can help you with that. CozyEarth.com. Use the promo code Beck for 20% off. If you get the post-purchase survey, tell them you heard it from me. Home isn't just where you live. Home is how you feel. Go home with Cozy Earth.
This is Glenn Beck.
There's a couple of stories that are very disturbing to me. Speaking of the Antichrist, new digital ID is now mandatory in the UK. This came out from Starmer on Friday. We're going to get into this. What does it mean? Switzerland just passed this. Australia has passed this. This is the beginning of the totalitarian surveillance state. And it's coming all over the West. Guarantee it. It will be everywhere. It cannot be allowed to happen here in America, or your freedom is truly over. So we got that going for us this weekend. And Stu, what do you make of the meeting that Hegseth is called with every single general from all over the world. That's never happened before. I mean, I got some theories, but I'd love to hear yours.
Well, it's not particularly common, that's for sure. I know that they
never happened.
They said something about it being he wanted to kind of set a standard of the warrior ethos. Mm-hmm. That was the reporting that came out afterward, like that he just wanted to kind of set a standard for the entire military face to face. He'd be speaking for about an hour. That's what at least the reporting has been. But I have no real theory outside of that. Honestly, I have no idea what's, I mean, I hope it's not something, bigger. And the initial worry was, of course, with all the stuff going on with Russia and all of this, that it could be leading to some larger scale effort that they fear.
I pray.
Hopefully that's not the case, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I could see him resetting the military, saying, look, I want to bring all you guys in. Here's what we'll tolerate. Here's what we'll not. I brought you in because I want you to know this is not lip service here. This is the way we're moving now. And if you don't like it, get out right now. Retire right now before I fire you. I could see him do something like that where they're really laying down the law on the new ethos of the military, which I would take as a positive, but we'll see. We'll talk about that with, at least one or two people that actually know coming up on today's program.
This is Glenn Beck.